fairly quickly. When you see that you can bring in hundreds of people and they can be stationed here, ready to go at a moment's notice. And then when you see things like boats back behind us from Tennessee, which Missouri and Tennessee came in as backups, depending on how bad the storm was. We are well prepared at the state level to help the cities and counties. And it's really a significant response to any disaster that we have that very few other states have. So we get there as quickly as we can. They wait for the phone call and they're gone to rescue people, for recovery, to whatever it may take. It's really astounding. All of these men and women here who work in the center and the people that you saw in the room earlier that come from around the state in these times to come together for Texas. So this is a spectacular facility that is brand new. It's only been here a couple of years. Chief?
I hit over here, boss.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, so thank y'all for joining us here today. Listen, most of the storm, as you know, is moved out of the state right now. So primary threats are moving out, but we still have a lot of people without power. We're still working with all of our local officials. We'll be touring down in the Galveston County area a little bit later this afternoon, meeting with those local officials there to make sure that we have all of their resource requests and are satisfying their needs as fast as possible.
All right, any questions?
We're very fortunate. We thought you were going to get more rain and more wind in the Bryan College Station area, and there was an impact obviously for some folks, but it did move along. But we wanted to be sure the people in Bryan College Station were ready, and your teams were ready here to serve the local community. So we caught a little bit of a break up here, and that weather went some other places, and we're there to help them as well. Questions?
Governor Patrick, has Governor Abbott's absence at all hindered the response
Not
from the
whatsoever.
state?
No, that's, he and I have worked together now for 9 years as governor, lieutenant governor, and I've been involved in all these situations before, just not as the lead on the team, but he's been in touch with me, he's been in touch with the state, so he's stayed in touch, but next man up. So I'm next man up, and good news is we have such a great team. For the governor or myself, our main job in a situation like this is to make sure all the needs are being met, but that we communicate to the public in advance of the storm and after the storm, and make sure our response to every Texan. So whether it was Governor Abbott, myself, it's a seamless transition. That's worked very well. Any other questions?
This storm took a turn, but you mentioned you next man up mentality. Yeah. How much maybe in the last week did you have conversations about how to get prepared, knowing you'd be running the ship with him across seas?
So all of these days run together. So I can't remember which day it was, but from early on where we saw the storm most likely coming to Texas more than Mexico as it came to the Yucatan, and I would say that was probably Tuesday or Wednesday of last week. I remember that we talked very early at 4 or 5 or 6 in the morning the first day and said, this is where we need to focus. And I remember talking to the governor right before Wheels Up. So he was talking to me even as he was getting ready to fly to Taiwan last week. And so he and I talked yesterday. But here's the deal. When you have a great team, the local level and the state level, it makes the job of being the governor, whether acting governor as I am or if Governor Abbott were here, it makes our job easier because we have the best professionals in the country looking out for Texans. So again, our job is to make sure everything is running smoothly, to make sure we communicate in advance where the storm is coming, and after the fact, like we're here today, we're going down to the Galveston area. After this, we'll go to other areas that were hit tomorrow to make sure that we're moving forward in the recovery. We still have a lot of people without power, particularly in the Houston area, and we're addressing that. Of course, that's the local company's responsibility to get that up, but they're making progress towards that.
On the note of power and energy, this is maybe more of a legislature question. You've made it no secret that you want more investments into the grid and things of that nature. One of the criticisms that we've seen on social media has been folks saying Texas is supposed to be the energy leader of the country, and then we get hit with the storm and 2.5 million people are out of power. What do you want to see done in the future?
So we have to disconnect those two issues. Being out of power from the storm is not related to what we need to do for the grid, which is a totally separate issue. The storm took lines down, took transmission lines down. We are a great place to be in southeast and northeast Texas, but we have lots of trees. And so when you have 80-mile-an-hour winds and gusts more than that, and all the trees that are around all the power lines in every neighborhood and every business community, you're going to have power go down. No matter how much we have on the grid, that's just a different function. So the companies are out there. The Center Point in the greater Houston area that serves that area, they're bringing in 11,500 people to assist with tree trimming, more of that, and getting the power back up. And of course, you have to wait for the wind to die down before they get up in the bucket truck, which they started yesterday. The grid is the second issue. We must have more power. Green energy is fine to keep costs down. Green energy is fine to keep the air clean, but you cannot build a state on the back of only windmills and solar. Because if the wind's not blowing and when the sun's not out, there's not enough power. And so in the last decade or so, you may not know this, but we are the 5th in the world in terms of wind in the world. So we've built up our non-dispatchables, but the renewables to the point that we've not built enough natural gas plants over the last 10 years. And that's because at the federal government level, they've given all the subsidies to green energy, and so people investing in natural gas were at such a disadvantage. And people aren't going to invest in something if they're going to lose money on the project. So we put together a plan, an incentive plan last year in the legislature, which passed $5 billion to incentivize, not a subsidy, but to incentivize people to build. They get a completion bonus, they get a low interest loan, 3% over 20 years, and they get a tax abatement on top of that. So we put out a program for $5 billion. We had $39 billion worth of projects that people wanted to build. So the governor and I put out a release last week. I believe it was on Friday or Thursday, I'm not sure of the day, last week, says we're going to increase that to $10 billion. And then in the next legislative session, I want to add another 5 or 10 billion to that. Because if you were following the hearing we had 3 weeks ago in Business and Commerce on the grid, right now we have 85,000 megawatts of power available to us. We need at least another 30,000 megawatts of natural gas that's dispatchable and reliable. But we got an update from ERCOT that in 2030, we need 150,000 megawatts of power. So we have 85, 150 in 6 years. It takes 3 to 4 years to build a plant, so we have to get to it. And a lot of that is just our growth, but a lot of it is also, it's the crypto mining that takes a lot of power. It's the data centers that take a lot of power, and AI is going to take a lot of power. And those are all exploding in the last 3 or 4 years. So, and by the way, what we're facing is what every other state and every other country in the world is facing. So we are moving actively. We're going to get these projects out in August, and the final contracts will be approved sometime this fall so they can get to work. And then we'll add to that and add to that more because we can do it in Texas. We have the natural gas here, and we just have not. In the last 10 or 15 years, it was all renewable, all renewable. Again, renewables are good in your portfolio, but you can't count on them.
Last question.
Yes, sir, any other questions?
Are you taking any other meetings or business while you're here in College Station aside from this?
No, we came in, we had a briefing before this, as you're aware. Look at the center. This is so impressive. I think what was it, a $60 million project?
35 for this one, yes.
35 for this one, and it's really impressive. And we wanted to get a briefing from the local officials and see our stationing. This gives me ideas for the next legislative session, because the truth is we need more than one of these in Texas. We have 254 counties, so we need a few more stations so we can always be close to a disaster. This is great for the population center here. We're perfectly located in Bryan College Station, but we probably need more of these. And I think when members come and see how their money was spent, because we always want to look at the tax dollars being spent wisely, this was a great investment for all of Texas. So we're just heading to other areas, but we're going to be moving out of here pretty quickly.
Thank you very much.
One last question, just about the Houston police officer who lost their life yesterday. What's your message to that officer's family and the community?
Yeah, the one thing that we said in every one of our press conferences: turn around, don't drown. And it just breaks my heart. We've had 4 deaths so far. I believe is the last count, and a couple of those were by falling trees. One, a man was doing what he was supposed to do. He was in his home and not out on the roads, and he had a freak accident with a tree falling on his house, and that happened to another person. But every time I see someone drown by driving on a road where the water is uncertain how deep it is, it's just heartbreaking, because it just didn't have to happen. So we can do the best we do to get that message out. Don't drive through water that you don't know how deep it is. It happens almost every storm. Our job is to continue to get that message out so it happens as infrequently and as possible, because we don't want to see that happen. What's really tragic about that person was heading in to do their job on a Monday morning when a lot of people are staying home. And so they were just trying to get to work to serve Houston. And probably had driven under that underpass many times on their way to work, and that day the water was just too high. So just a tragedy for what I would call a person who was a hero coming to work in 50-mile-an-hour winds and a lot of rain. So our prayers go out to all those families. Heartbreaking. But it's another story that I hope people will remember for future storms. Hey, thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.